Hey, welcome back to the 2 by 2. I'm Lauren Wombold Patel, your host. And if you've been out on your own for a while, then you already know your expertise isn't always enough. We know that clients don't hire the smartest person in the room. They always hire the person that they trust the most. And trust doesn't happen by accident. It's built on purpose through your actions and the brand that the world sees. This week, we're doing something special. We're kicking off a 3-part series on exactly that, how independent consultants build a brand people trust. We'll go into narrative, thought leadership, and at the end, we're going to give a real example of somebody who I think is doing all of this right. First up this week is Angie Jones. Angie is the CEO of Sweet Ghost and also serves as a fractional head of content. Before that, though, she spent years in publishing and marketing, including leading marketing teams and interviewing hundreds of people as a journalist. She also started her own publication, which she successfully exited. Today, she helps B2B leaders and independent consultants put words to the expertise, stories, and perspectives they've built over their careers. We invited her to talk about how to define your narrative and your point of view, and why that clarity is what wins trust before a client ever sees your resume. So let's get into it. All right, everybody, welcome back. Today we're joined by Angie Jones. Hey, Angie. How are you?
I'm good, Lauren. How are you?
I'm good. So Angie is going to be a great guest. She is an executive narrative strategist, is how she describes herself. So what she's going to talk about today is how to teach you to figure out how to say what you do. Yes? Yes.
Yeah.
All right. She's also fractional head of content, which I think is an interesting role that we haven't talked much about on the 2 by 2 as a fractional, but one that's certainly necessary for companies where thought leadership is an important part of building trust. And within that, she is the founder of Sweet Ghost. So for more than 2 decades, Angie's helped turn around stories into business results. She started in her early career in publishing as a journalist, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And she's taken those principles to figure out how to help people like you and me figure out how to talk about themselves to grow their businesses. So Angie, thank you, and welcome to the 2 by 2.
Thanks, Lauren. I'm excited to be here.
Cool. Well, let's start with the journalist angle. So you were a journalist. You get people to say things.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, I started my career in publishing. So I had a couple of magazines and did a lot of editorial work and also did a lot of my own writing. So I don't even want to put a number on it, like easily 1,000 interviews probably in that time, which is still my favorite thing about the work that I do, is getting to interview people and ask them questions about what they do.
For how long did you do that work?
So I had my publishing company for about 6 years. I had started a second magazine in the spring of 2008. And for those of us who were around during that time, I don't need to tell you that it was disastrous timing. And so I sold my first publication and then I shuttered the second and went into media sales for a while.
Did you start that right out of undergrad? Were you trained to do that, or did you have some, why did you start doing that?
Okay, so you know how when you leave college, you're like equal parts brave and dumb?
Yes.
So I had worked at a magazine during college, so I had a great mentor that I worked with. I minored in journalism and just decided that was something that I wanted to do. I loved the creativity. I loved the deadline-driven environment, and that holding that finished product in your hand was just really fun.
So when you started this on your own, were you doing print?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. So
wow.
Can we back up? We'll get to all this interesting stuff, but I got to ask the entrepreneur stories first. How'd you fund that?
So I took out a loan.
Okay. So you're like 22.
Yep. Yeah. So actually the banker, I don't know why he gave me the money still. I know what he told me. He said, if you work half as hard on your business as you have on this business plan, I don't need to worry about you. Because I think I dropped like a 60-page, I type A'd it like crazy. I dropped like a 60-page business plan on his desk with, 5-year cash flow projections and the whole 9 yards. So yeah. So
this is super, we didn't talk about this before. This is super interesting. So you're a writer who then does a pro forma. How did you get to the numbers? That must have been did you have a mentor? Did you have help? Were you really just a mathematician in disguise?
I did have a mentor, and I think I was just really curious and ambitious. And I also worked with my local SBDC. They were really helpful with that too. I think that the director there probably got sick of hearing from me, but she was very valuable as a resource.
That's
So
fascinating.
yeah,
What
and
was
I
the
also,
topic?
I guess I should say, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs too. So like my parents were in business the whole time I was growing up. My grandparents, aunts, uncles, everybody.
Okay.
So
Did you,
yeah.
okay, we're going to go even further back.
Okay.
As a
Okay.
child, did you have any early signs of this entrepreneurial bug?
Oh yeah. 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 I think probably very annoying to my parents. So yeah, I think I was probably like the classic lemonade stand kid. Like I was all about that. I grew up like living in a store. So like my sister and I were just like we were used to transactions just happening. And then yeah, I think I started working for my parents when I was like 8, just cleaning the store and things like that.
What kind of a
So I've
store was
I've
it?
always liked my parents owned an appliance store.
This is amazing.
So
Where?
I like dusted TVs in a really small town in north central Iowa. So my
Okay, this is
hometown is
amazing.
Manson, 1,800 people.
Okay, so this is like, picture this, Sicily, 1922, except it's picture this, Northwest Iowa, rural Iowa, circa
Perfect.
early 90s. Yeah, am I right on the age range? About somewhere in the early 90s. The world is still
Yep.
analog.
Yep.
We
Early
still
90s.
need appliances. The world has not gone big box. Baby Angie is dusting microwaves and watching people come in and buy washing machines.
Yes.
And has the bug. Okay. I have a
Totally.
question about the lemonade stand.
Yeah.
Was it really
Okay.
lemonade or like, what was it?
No, like legit lemonade. Yeah.
Okay.
So we lived right across from a retirement community where my grandparents also lived. So all of their friends, like we would just park out at the end of the driveway and all of their friends would be like, Kate's granddaughters are out there with a lemonade stand. We better go buy it. So it was like totally taking advantage of the old people and their love
Well,
for
I
us.
mean, I would say going to where the customer needed.
Yes. Yeah. No, definitely. So that was probably like the earliest stuff.
So I ask these questions. So this is a common trend. So I have people on this
Yeah.
podcast. This is like perfect. I have people on this podcast that are entrepreneurs. All right. And they have this bug. And I always ask them this question because there is this very, very strong pattern between the environment they grew up in and
Mm-hmm.
the lemonade stand idea. They all
Yeah.
had one and they're all different. Another woman was like going into the golf course across the street and like fishing out the balls and then selling them on the seventh. Like, I mean, it's all sorts of things like that. But I feel like it's a really common trait. It's funny because like I didn't do that and that was not my MO. My MO was like figure out how do I perform a service to make dollars to pay for whatever I wanted. It was
Yeah.
never selling to other people. And that problem in my life persists. It's like, how hard can I work to make the dollar? How smart can I work to make the dollar?
Yeah.
But never like, can I set up the stand? And like to this day, I'm still like learning that skill. It's not something that comes naturally to me. So this is fantastic. Okay, cool. And then from your magazine, I wanted to ask you one more question about that. What was the topic?
So I grew up riding horses and competing in rodeos. And so that's actually, it was both of my magazines were in like the Western lifestyle and rodeo space.
Amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
this is so cool. So after you did those, how did you get it? So you sold the magazine. Why did you decide to sell?
So this was such a bad timing thing, but
Yeah, okay.
I really loved my second magazine and I felt like it had so much room to grow. And I also didn't want to hire a huge staff. So the first magazine I felt like had kind of leveled off and was a good solid product, but didn't have as much growth. It was just a smaller market. And so I really wanted to focus on the second publication and really grow that. And so I sold my first magazine, but that was in '08. So the second magazine just didn't take off. And a lot of that was I was underfunded. I undercharged for ad space. Like I look back at it now and with a business lens and I'm like, I see where I went wrong, but it was also just a really hard time for print publications too.
Yeah. I mean, for everything, of course. I mean, good
Yes.
timing though on selling the first one before that though. Not that you
Yeah.
could have called it, but that's luck on your side. It's easier to go into something with a little bit of a nugget in your pocket.
Yeah.
So after the magazines, you decided just to get a regular job like the rest of us.
Yes. Yeah.
How'd that work out?
Running your own business is hard, and
Yeah.
I think I was ready for something easy for a while. But I think it probably only took, 3 to 5 years before I started getting the itch to build something again. But by that time, I had landed at a place that I just really loved working at. So I used that time to kind of learn everything I could about business, thinking like I'm going to file all of this away for whatever comes next. And so, yeah, I spent 8 years there. And then I worked at another company briefly before going out on my own just over 2 years ago.
Why did you decide to go out on your own? Like, what was the trigger?
Yeah. So I was a marketing director and I have two small kids, and I just felt like I was so busy and my brain was so full and I just needed more flexibility. Also, because I'm rural, like the office was 45 minutes away.
Yeah.
So, and I was hybrid, but still, like, even making that trip a couple times a week, you just feel like you're giving up so much of your time just
Yeah.
driving.
That's a common, even if you live in an urban environment, it's
Yeah.
45 minutes for
Yeah.
me to go.
Yeah.
It actually was 45 minutes for me to go 4.5 miles.
Yeah.
So,
Mine was like 45 minutes to go 40 miles.
yeah.
So,
But you have to pay attention. I'm just kind of sitting there. I don't know. It was really frustrating, but no, I hear you. So you decide to go out on your own, which makes perfect sense. I mean, I don't know. I felt this way when I did that. I felt like if I worked this hard for myself, for someone else, how could I possibly fail?
yeah.
Do you have like an innate confidence about it, just like in your gut?
Yeah, I think so. I think also like having the experience of having my magazines before, because really a service business is a much simpler model than a publishing company with print costs and everything. So I felt really good about it. I had been consciously growing my network for a couple years leading up to leaving, and just really felt like it was doable.
When you left, did you have like an idea of this fractional head of content, or were you thinking like I'm going to go out and find a client
Yeah,
and kind
it
of
was a
sort it?
little different. So my previous employer, I was going to stay on as a fractional head of marketing with them,
Great.
and kind of do my director role, but I had a strong number two that I felt really comfortable elevating. And then that deal fell through at the last minute. And looking back, it was actually such a blessing, even though I was freaking out at the time because I did not have an anchor client. I had like two or three smaller clients, but it really allowed me to take that fractional CMO type lens off, because that's what I had been thinking I was going to do. And I had like this blank slate, which I think is something a lot of us when we leave corporate kind of struggle with, because we've spent our careers trying to shoehorn ourselves into a job description. And then you go out on your own and there's no job description.
Right.
So I had to ask myself, which parts of this job do I really love? And honestly, I could care less if I ever stand up another CRM or replatform an e-commerce website. I like the storytelling. I like the communication piece. And so that's why I decided to shift gears and focus just on content.
Yeah. When you left, did you leave with how did you figure out your own positioning? Because I feel like this is really difficult.
It is.
It's very hard for people, even storytellers, to be able to tell their own story. Is that something that you struggled with, or did you approach it right out of the
No,
gate? Did it come organically?
no, it did not come organically at all. I think that was made more frustrating by the fact that I was going, I should be able to do this. Like, I literally do this for companies. Like, why can't I do this for myself? But I always say you can't read the label from inside the bottle. And that is true even for career marketers. And so a lot of mine was trial and error. And to be honest, like, I'm still tweaking it and figuring it out 2.5 years in. And maybe I always will be, but it's definitely really hard, because you have seen all the things you can do and you're so close to
Yeah.
in your career.
Why do we think this is so hard? I mean, I know you can't see. I like the analogy of you can't read the label from outside the bottle, and you can't. And I think we all
Yeah.
know that's true. Is it just like a perception issue? I don't know. Well, what do you think are the things that people struggle with? Because I know everybody struggles with this.
Yeah. For my clients, one of the things I see is they are so talented and they are so smart, and there's literally 50 different things that they could do.
Yeah.
There's 50 different ways they could position themselves. So figuring out, first of all, what do I want? Like I said, when you're doing this on your own, you actually have the power to choose. And so I think that makes it hard. And I also just think perspective. We all have some degree of imposter syndrome, I think. And I see that a lot with clients where they'll come in and they'll say, well, I don't really have anything that interesting to say. And I just love that, because I'm like, yeah, you do. Like, let's talk. We'll find something.
Do you think they default? Like the other way I see this happen. So I see that happening. It's really interesting, actually. Let's pause on the imposter syndrome. It's interesting to see this with a group of people who have chosen to go out on their own. So they must believe that they can do something. Do you think it's they believe, do you see them able, are they thinking in terms of doing versus saying? Do you think that's the breakdown? Or do you think they're confused by the 50 things? Like, what problems do you see with this group? I think it would help. I'm asking the question. Let me just give you a context. I'm asking the question because I think it would help people self-diagnose.
Sure.
Like, am I doing this? Am I doing this? Am I doing this? Like, why is this so hard? And maybe help them break through this problem a bit.
Yeah. So I don't think it's any one thing. I do think that it changes depending on where you're at. So my clients that I would say are in that early sort of finding service market fit stage, it's more like, I don't know what I want, or I want to tell people that I'm doing all of the things because I can do all of these things. So I'm going to talk about all these things I could do. And then later on, I think it becomes more of like, well, is that unique enough? Or is it interesting enough? Or is it differentiated enough? And that seems to be something that people reach for a lot. Well, like, you're not trying to be like absolute unique one. That gets layered in with how you work and how you think about your work. You don't have to come up with like this absolutely unique positioning.
Yeah. So what do you recommend for people starting to think through like, okay, I know I need to get my positioning. Like, how do you think they should start thinking about it?
So I think first is you mean like who you want to serve and all of that.
Yeah. Like someone says, all right, I know I need my positioning. I'm listening to us right now. And they're right. Like I'm talking about 50 different things, or I'm talking about like the service I perform, not the problem I solve. Like, God, what problem do I solve? I don't even know.
Yes. So
where do you start?
The first thing I tell people when I'm working through this part with them is that who you sell to and who you market to are not the same. Like you can sell to people beyond where you're marketing, but unless you get laser focused, it's going to be really hard for people to refer you.
Okay, this is super counterintuitive, actually. Let's break it down.
Yeah. So
how tight do they need to be? I mean, let me interject just a little bit here. Okay. So this is one of I had like 3 learnings in business school.
Okay.
Like I took away after we paid $100,000. It's like, what did I learn? I learned 3 things, 2 professional, 1 personal. The first one was cash flow is everything around me. Watch cash flow. Not relevant to this conversation, relevant to what I love to do. Second was from a strategic marketing class. And the whole point of this class was exactly what you are saying, which is you need to target the center of the bullseye. And the whole class, 12 sessions, is around fighting every counterintuitive belief that people would have to argue against the very center of the bullseye. So I'm with you with this, but I think it's worth trying to break this down. Like, why the center?
Yeah. So it really, for this type of work, I think it really does come down to referability, because you want to be top of mind when somebody says, well, I have this client and they have this industrial manufacturing business and they are struggling with their sales. Like, you want to be the first person they think of, not, oh, I might know somebody. Like, you want to pop to mind immediately. I think where people get hung up is they think if they niche, if they get really focused, that they are going to be alienating other opportunities. But I don't think that's the case. If you stay on the center of the bullseye, somebody who's slightly off center from that bullseye is going to be like, well, I'm kind of like that, but a little different. Could you do that? It gives them a place to start. It's almost like when you hand somebody a rough draft of something versus a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah. Why does the network referability thing, I think we can break that out too. I mean, obviously there's some network effect there. And you mentioned you work in industrial manufacturing. Let's even make it further. You work in oil and gas, midfield services, midfield refineries, and they each have these types of machines. And these machines have a quirk. How easy, 1, your knowledge about that particular quirk, but 2, do we think that those guys know each other?
Yeah. Totally.
Right? Yeah. Like those guys know each other. All the guys, you go out to Lubbock, so I'm in Texas. You go out to Lubbock, you go out to Midland, you go out into that Abilene, onto that area. How many of those guys are there? Which means they go to the same schools, they go to the same church, they go to the same conferences every year. Like, even if these people are same as you got guys in Calgary, those guys in Midland know the guys in Calgary because of this like very small pool of people that work in a small area. So there's the network piece. But I think there's another piece too, which is really important, which is expertise and trust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
So how let's talk about how a service, maybe let's break off into a little bit of a tangent about how does a service business grow? What's the fuel?
Yeah.
Referrals? But why do you need a referral? Like, why does a referral matter?
Yeah. So, well, I think it depends a little bit too on the type of service business. So,
Okay.
like, freelancer would be very different than like a fractional consultant. So, like, somebody who's a fractional executive, like, their engagements are going to be longer. So, their business development, I think, looks really different from somebody who's doing, small project based work. But I think people want to know, like, at the end of the day, a business owner wants to know, can you solve my problem?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you say, like, I'm used to working in this context, in this thing, like, there's going to be trust there
Yeah.
because you've seen it before. You've seen around the corner that they haven't seen around. And I think that's what people are looking for, that judgment and discernment more and more. That's the value of a consultant.
Yeah. And to your point, like as you kind of go up the complexity ladder into like from a freelancer, which is a task based at its most base level can be a task based job. I'm not saying every freelancer is, okay. But
Yeah.
because a lot are, but there's a continuum from task based to completely expertise and judgment based. And the higher you go up that ladder, the greater trust plays in that process.
Yes, 100%.
All right. Any other reasons why, going back to the core of the bullseye? So yes, you need referability, you need trust. Bust the myth for me. Like people outside of that core of the bullseye. So in the first circle and the second circle, even in the wide third circle, the message resonates.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Well, I think there's always a piece of it that they're drawn to.
A piece of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're like, well, I don't quite fit exactly this, but I have this same problem, but I'm not in manufacturing. Can you solve that for me?
Right.
And once you have a conversation and you have expertise in that area, they begin to trust you, and it works the same way. But by getting very specific, you've given them a starting point to understand your expertise and where you sit.
Yeah. So when someone comes to you and they say, okay, I understand, I get it, I'm bought in, I believe we need to be targeted, like where do you start with them? Like how do you help them think through finding their own positioning that targets the center of the bullseye?
So it depends on if they're brand new again, or if they've been in business a little while. But I think if you look back at your career and you think like, what have you been excited about? Like, what are you interested in? Who have been your favorite types of clients? And sometimes it's not even an industry. It's more of like a psychographic, component. Instead of like, I want to work with manufacturers, it might be, well, I want to work with businesses who believe that business is relational and not just transactional. So sometimes it's a little more that, but I think identifying those things, it's usually not identifying them that's the problem. It's getting people to be consistent about being hyper focused on the middle of the bullseye.
How do you get them to start thinking through what their positioning is? Like, let's say you're going to go through the exercise with them. Are you asking certain questions to help people generate this idea? Or
So usually when they come to me for writing, they have their positioning mostly figured out. Like we might need to narrow it down a little bit for it to be specific. If somebody gives me their positioning statement, the first thing that I use what I call the content question a lot.
Okay.
So instead of I help X do Y so they can get Z, I turn that into a question. So you say, how can X, get Y so they can Z? And once we start asking that question, my target for like, is this positioning specific enough is usually I'll be like, could you write a book about this? And if they say, yeah, I could write a book about that, that's great. Then my next follow-up is, could you write 10 books about it from different angles? And if they were like, yeah, then it's too broad. Like we need it to be something that you can unpack in your content over time, but specific enough that it's going to resonate with a certain type of individual. So that's just how my brain works, I guess, is like, how many books could you write about what you're trying to be known for?
Do you have some examples of what good looks like?
Yeah. So I think I had a client that came and they were like, I want to help mid-sized businesses improve their GTM strategy so they can grow their business. Well, Everybody wants that. So is there a specific type of mid-sized business? And I think we ended up narrowing it all the way down to like companies running on EOS because that was a piece of their background, entrepreneur operating system, like that they had a lot of experience with. That a lot of times it's just they have a preference, but they're afraid to say it because they're afraid of what it would exclude. Well, I can work with companies that aren't EOS. Yeah, but you have this and it helps differentiate you. And if you wrote a book through that lens, it would be far more interesting than if you just wrote about helping mid-sized companies. So it's kind of drilling down to that next level.
Did you get to a point with that person where you felt their energy change around it?
Yes, there's always and I see this a lot when I start asking, like, we look at the content question and then we start unpacking it. So I'll be like, how has your thinking about that changed over the years? Or what's something you think people get wrong about that? And almost always there's like a worldview that sits underneath the problem they solve, and their energy shifts big time when they start talking about that. So they'll start talking faster, they get more passionate and animated. They'll say, well, we should or should not, which normally I'm not a fan of shoulding, but in this case, it tells me a lot about what they're passionate about. Or they'll go off on a tangent and then they'll apologize for their being on their soapbox. And I'm like, no, go back to the soapbox. That's going to tell us so much about what you should be talking about online.
Okay, that's the energy shift. By the way, if you're watching the video, she just had an energy shift. So
Yes.
big smile, like
Yep.
she's shaking her hair. No, that's
100%.
totally true.
Yeah.
So, but you're looking for the tell. Okay, so, but what this matters though, because that's the good stuff.
Yes.
That's the like individual, authentic, like differentiating, this is me type of content.
Yes. So I really love walking people through this part because I think it's deeper than the traditional advice, which is, I think, always like, well, find a spiky point of view. I very much do not believe in manufacturing a spiky point of view just to appease the algorithm. That's one thing if you're trying to sell like a $99 course. But if you are trying to build enough trust that you can sit at someone's leadership team table, let's not manufacture things. Like, let's be authentic. And so then we start pulling at that thread and we see like what the real thing is. Like there's truth in there. And so then it's not so much, a manufactured spiky point of view as something that you believe, your worldview that has informed how you think about the problem you solve.
Can you share an example of a client that has discovered this?
Yeah. Let me pick one. I have one client who I just love, and she says that community and commerce are inextricably linked and that they're not at odds. And I just love that because it gives such a human and caring quality to everything she says. And so when we run her content through that lens, I'm always asking, like, does this align with that? Is this giving that same belief and energy versus just talking about like, here is how you should put together your marketing strategy. Yeah. Like you can go on and you can ask ChatGPT that, but you can't ask ChatGPT to tell you why they believe in this because they were impacted by a startup that they worked with early on or something. Those are the stories that when you start talking about those, you become a real person and not just a talking head. And that is honestly who people want sitting around their leadership team table.
That's absolutely true. It's interesting. I think it's really hard to see that in it's so funny how it's so hard to see that in yourself. And I also think, I don't know, do you feel this way too? Like even when you know what that is, it's hard to create any kind of content for yourself that authentically, I don't know, I find it hard to create content for myself that authentically reflects that over, because you have to do it over and over and over again, right? Yeah. So it's hard to do it first, and there's a lot of judgment involved. And is this right? Is this not right? Do your clients struggle with that too?
Yes, I struggle with that. So I think everybody does to some degree. For me, it's kind of like I know all versions of me. So it's very weird to like lead with just this one, for example. And then I think the other piece of it is I'm really, really picky about something that I make.
Yeah, the pickiness.
So, like, yes. Yeah. Like I'll just nitpick at it to no end. And really, usually that's a way of like stalling on hitting publish, which we all also do.
Do you create your own content?
I actually run my content through my process, and I have a contractor that I work with who handles a lot of the drafting. She does the interview. I have her interview me.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of value in injecting another person. So I obviously like have a team that helps me because like I can't do it. And I will say too, like this is not a foolproof method because my team puts out, you go look what I say on LinkedIn. I think people would agree. 1 out of 10 feels really authentic and good. And 9 are kind of still a little bit canned. Even though that team knows me really well, we still struggle with like getting my voice through the pipe unless it's,
Yeah. No, that is very true. People talk. There's a way that you talk and there's a way that you write. So part of my process is I build a knowledge base in AI for every client and I populate that when we're building out like the voice guide. We populate it with a written voice and a spoken voice because
interesting.
a
Okay.
lot of times the way we write is a little more formal
Yeah.
than the way we talk. But there's usually it's because we've been taught to be that way. And I'm always kind of trying to push people more into the way that they talk than the way that they write because we've been conditioned to write in like this very proper way. And I think we're kind of all sick of reading that.
Yeah. And now the AI writes in its own way, even if you're still right. It's just like doesn't come out. I don't know. I still struggle with this too. Actually, let me ask you like a side question on that. Tools wise, when you're developing AI repositories, like how are you doing that?
Yeah. So overall for the process, I have this, I call it the AI sandwich. It's a terrible analogy, but start with human, then layer in some AI and then end with
Then
human.
human,
So we're, the interview is very human. It's very real. And then we're drafting with AI, but then we're going back with a human editor and versus that style guide that we built and saying like, does this sound like them? Does it have the AI rhythm? AI has like a really specific rhythm, I think, when it writes. And so we're trying to take that out and replace it more with their rhythm that they naturally use. So I naturally speak in very long sentences. So I try not to take that out of my writing. That's just one example.
In your AI, go to the meat and cheese. Are you using like technically? Are you creating a database or like
so
are
I'm
you
creating a knowledge base in Claude. So
okay?
we have like all
as a project?
Yes. Yeah. So I put each client is their own project.
Okay.
And then we load that with their knowledge base, past content, their onboarding call, everything from their onboarding call goes in there as well. So that we are sticking true to that. And then I also have a formula in there that's like 80% of their content should answer some piece of their content question. And all pieces of content should reflect the underlying worldview or narrative that we have talked through.
Yeah. I'm trying to get this. So people are doing this in different ways. I'm trying to think through, do we need to take because I have a huge library of content, like enormous. 3 years of doing this plus 25 years of consulting, which means I've got, 1,000 pages of kind of my go-to decks.
Yeah.
Should we create some sort of, this is a rhetorical question. Do not answer this. Like, do we need to create some sort of like relational database and parse out the data into chunks somehow so we have the categorization done? Would that make the end product better? Or I was talking to I was doing another podcast talking to somebody else, and I don't know when your podcast will come out, so I won't reference if it's before or after. So stay tuned, everybody. But she was saying she takes all the transcripts and she has an agent that she like does AI in steps. So she like, first she takes everything that she has and then she has an agent, and that agent pulls out the pieces that are relevant to the brand framework that she's built. And then she takes those and then she puts all those through like a project, but she's not like repeating on it, right? Like you're taking the whole database and letting it live. She may have a little bit, but she's taking this extra step every time. I don't know. Like, so I'm looking for people to, I don't know. I feel like it's all now we're all kind of sorting this out as non-technical people.
Yeah. And I think so when I do interviews, I do monthly interviews with clients for new topics. And so then we integrate that into their knowledge base. And so we're kind of always adding to it like on an ongoing basis, which I actually think is it comes up with some really interesting things sometimes because I might forget that a client said something, but that if we connect it to something they said in this interview with something they said 6 months ago, it can end up being a really interesting and like sometimes meatier point. So it's helpful for surfacing ideas too.
What tools do you use? Any tools other than that? Just I think it's a good general question for people to figure out what people are experimenting with.
Yeah. So basically I use Claude and Fathom. I flag things in Fathom a lot when I'm doing interviews. And then on the backside, it's Google Suite. I use everything Google, but it's a pretty light tech stack.
Yeah, that is.
So yeah.
There's so many like random, everybody's like releasing these, right? There's like thousands and thousands of tools.
So many choices.
We use one called Pressmaster.
I'm familiar with that.
Are you from? Okay, so Pressmaster is freaking amazing. By the way,
okay,
they're not paying me to say that. Okay, they should. Like if I was actually good at marketing, I'd be like, I need to invest in like market this company. We don't use it for LinkedIn or that type of level of content, but what we use it for is SEO article, now GEO articles and questions and white papers. But it is the single best like topic generation to research engine. It produces 1,000-page articles that are so good. I mean, they're better than any copywriter we ever had. Like I would imagine we would have paid $5,000 per article for like that type of content, which obviously we were not doing. I still have a human in the loop and she's still necessary on the front end and the back end. She's the bread, but it has 10x'd her productivity, but with also 10x in quality. It's amazing. So it's something you may want to look at. I mean, like if you're thinking about like your business and how do you add on services to like produce papers and GEO articles and stuff, like it could be really valuable for you.
Yeah. I'm going to check it out.
It's a great tool. So give those guys a shout out. All right. So I want to conclude with a little bit of expectation setting. So when someone starts this process, right? Like I'm an independent consultant. I realize my positioning is all over the place. I know I've got to like get out this thought leadership, create trust. What should someone expect in terms of how long this is going to take? I mean, this is not an overnight thing.
It is not an overnight thing. No, honestly, like most of my clients, I tell them, give it 6 months. And if in 6 months, and also you have to decide what is the metric that you're willing to live with. Because if you are saying to me, I'm going to do content for 6 months and I want it to be generating inbound leads, exactly matching my ICP, like you're just not going to get that. That's not what this is for. What you will get is you will probably get more conversations. And I think that's usually with my clients, what I'm saying, like who is this sparking conversations with when you are putting content out into the world. I had a client a while back who emailed me and he had been trying to connect with another service provider in the area because he felt like there was a lot of overlap and they could be good referral partners for each other. And he had been trying to connect with this person for a couple years with no luck. And they reached out to him on LinkedIn. And said, like, can we have coffee? Now, did that land him a client? No. But did it land him an incredibly good referral partner that's going to change his business? Yeah. And it opened the door for the conversation. So
Absolutely.
I think that's what you need to be measuring, not like, did I land a client?
Yeah. I don't say, even when your business grows, it will never be attributable.
Yeah. Don't try to do that.
So it's like one of these things. I feel like once you get to a certain point in your business, it's kind of table stakes. I actually have a question. When in there, like with all the different things you need to do to move from a full-time job into generating your own work, where do you stack rank this in terms of importance? Like at what point should someone think, okay, now is the time when I really need to get serious about this versus like just some basics around getting dollars in the door, frankly?
Yeah. So before you feel ready is my first answer. So everybody is like, well, I just need to get my position. I'm guilty of this too. Like, I just need to get my position a little better or my messaging a little, smarter or whatever. Like, start before you think you're ready. But when you first make that jump out, like start with your network. So I see a pattern with my fractional clients and my independent consultant clients where their network really carries them for like a good year to 18 months.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah. And so but then after that, you need to have been building referral partners outside of your existing network. So, if for the first 6 months, you're just knocking down, beating on doors and trying to get work, great. But at some point, even if it's just one post a week, start showing up in that way and use that to reinforce your other business development activities so that you don't meet someone at a networking event and then never hear from them or they never hear from you again.
Yeah. I wish I had started. Well, I mean, I can say I wish I had started doing this earlier. To be fair, earlier for me would have been, like circa 2015.
Yeah.
You know, like the world was different than it is now. Social media is different. The way people use it professionally is different.
Yeah.
So it would have looked different than it looks today. I started doing this 2021, maybe 2022. It's hard to like time and space eludes me these days, but about that time frame, and that was too late. And the reason it was too late was because the point about timing, it takes 6 months to see any result. It takes a year and a half to tangibly feel the impact of it. And I wish that, I started when the economy was a little bit shaky and we had a little bit of like, okay, what's happening in the business? Plus I had had a good year and I had a little bit of cash to front to invest in some help of people like you. But I wish that I had done this myself. And now I think with some of these tools, it is really easy. I wouldn't say it's easy. It is significantly easier to do some of the basics, or to have the basics kind of to limit the investment that you need to put into somebody else. Great. Okay. Well, let me ask a couple of very rapid fire questions and then we'll end it. What do you think the biggest mistake is that consultants make when they explain what they do?
Well, they just talk about what they do, just the features of it. It's the I help X do Y to get Z. That's a great starting point, but it does not make you memorable.
What kind of content should consultants stop making? Like, what's the buzzer? Where are we taking the axe today?
Stop making content that is devoid of your personality.
Yes.
Show up as a human.
Yes.
That's who we want to read. Yeah.
I would say if anyone here, so we're right now, I'm doing a series of these, sorry to interrupt again, but I'm doing this series where I'm interviewing 5 of you that work and do a little bit of a different thing in this same space of positioning yourself and how do you talk about that? That is the single most important thing. Everybody says it.
Yep.
So stop bullshitting the world, be yourself.
Yes.
All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Finally, what do you think is the one thing that can make a person easy to refer?
Well, you have to be memorable. And being memorable means not just reciting your elevator pitch, but giving them something to grab onto that is deeper than that. So if I always tell people talk about why you believe what you believe, or talk about how you think about the problem you solve, because that's something that when I hear that and I go, actually, I'm going to be on a LinkedIn Live next week. And when he reached out, he was like, I just know that you and I think the same about this problem. And I think we would have a really interesting conversation. So it wasn't what I do that got me the invite. It was how I think about the problem. So start talking about that more. It's way more.
Be an interesting, and that, why does that matter? Just fundamentally, that means be interesting to the target of your bullseye. Why? Because you understand their problem and you understand their pain and you can tell stories.
Yeah.
All around it.
Yeah.
So great. Well, Angie Jones, where can people find you?
So definitely look me up on LinkedIn, and then anything else, probably on my website, which is just sweetghost.com.
SUITE, not sweet as in candy, sweet as in a bundle of rooms. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Angie. This is a great conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us.
Thanks for having me, Lauren. This is great. Talk soon.